Vikings conquered kingdoms and crossed oceans, but they knew some battles couldn't be won. While modern gardeners accidentally plant deadly toxins, these ancient warriors had survival wisdom that kept their families alive. Today we're discovering 15 deadly plants that Vikings never grew, and the life-saving alternatives they chose instead. Deadly nightshade, the silent killer, Solanum nigrum. Vikings called it death's berry, and for good reason. While modern gardeners sometimes mistake deadly nightshade for harmless garden plants, Viking communities knew this glossy-leafed plant, with its tempting black berries, was a family destroyer. Every part contains potent alkaloids like atropine and scopolamine that attack the nervous system within hours. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements shows they deliberately avoided areas where nightshade grew wild. They understood that even small amounts could cause hallucinations, seizures, and death, especially dangerous for children who might mistake the berries for food. Viking mothers taught their daughters to recognize its distinctive purple flowers and shiny leaves from an early age. Modern science confirms their wisdom. Just 2 to 5 berries can kill a child, and even touching the plant can cause skin irritation. What makes it particularly dangerous is how normal it looks, like a harmless garden herb until it's too late. Instead, Vikings cultivated safe alternatives that provided similar benefits. They grew regular cabbage and kale for nutrition, and used juniper berries for their antiseptic properties. These hardy plants thrived in Scandinavian climates and provided reliable food sources without the deadly risk. Today, you can follow Viking wisdom by choosing proven safe plants like modern kale varieties, which offer superior nutrition without any toxicity concerns. Their survival knowledge remains as valuable now as it was 1,000 years ago. Poison hemlock, the philosopher's death, Conium maculatum. Vikings knew this plant as spotted death, the same toxin that killed Socrates in ancient Greece. While it resembles harmless wild carrots or parsley, poison hemlock contains coniine, a neurotoxin so powerful that even touching it can be dangerous. Viking traders who traveled Mediterranean routes brought back stories of its lethal reputation, ensuring it never found a place in Norse gardens. What made hemlock particularly feared was its deceptive appearance. Its delicate white flowers and feathery leaves look innocent, even attractive. But Vikings understood that beauty often hides danger. They taught their children to recognize its distinctive purple-spotted stems and musty smell that distinguished it from safe plants. The toxin works by paralyzing the nervous system, starting with the legs and working upward until it stops the heart and lungs. There's no antidote, and death comes slowly and painfully. Viking communities couldn't risk having such a plant anywhere near their settlements, especially with children and livestock around. Archaeological evidence shows Vikings instead cultivated wild carrots and parsnips, plants that provided similar root vegetables without the deadly risk. They also grew dill and fennel for their feathery foliage and culinary uses, giving them the visual appeal of hemlock without any toxicity. Modern gardeners can follow this Viking wisdom by choosing safe alternatives like carrots, parsnips, and culinary herbs. These provide the same garden benefits without turning your backyard into a potential crime scene. Wolfsbane, the Viking warrior's fear, Aconitum napellus. Even Viking warriors, who feared little in battle, gave wolfsbane a wide berth. This plant earned its name because Vikings used it to poison wolf traps, but they never ever grew it near their homes. The distinctive blue hood-shaped flowers might look beautiful, but every part of this plant contains aconitine, one of nature's most potent neurotoxins. Vikings understood that wolfsbane was so dangerous that even handling it without gloves could cause numbness, heart problems, and death. They called it Thor's helmet for its flower shape, but treated it with the respect reserved for the gods, admired from a distance, never touched. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements shows they actively removed it from areas where they planned to build. What makes wolfsbane particularly treacherous is how quickly it acts. Unlike other toxic plants that take hours to show effects, wolfsbane can cause symptoms within minutes of contact. Viking healers knew that even tiny amounts could stop a warrior's heart faster than any enemy sword. Instead of risking wolfsbane's beauty, Vikings cultivated safe blue flowers, like wild lupines and cornflowers. These provided the same striking color without the deadly consequences. They also grew borage for its blue flowers and edible leaves, giving them both beauty and nutrition. Today, you can achieve the same dramatic blue garden impact with safe alternatives like delphiniums, lupines, or borage, plants that won't turn your garden into a hazardous waste site. enjoying raiding the past with us, then consider using YouTube's new feature and hype this video. It really helps a small channel like mine get more views and allows me to create more content. To hype the video on your mobile device, swipe left on the comment preview carousel until the option to hype the video surfaces, or tap and the carousel will change to show the option to hype. Your support helps a ton. Now back to plants that Vikings never grew, and you shouldn't either. Henbane, the madness plant, Hyoscyamus niger. Vikings called henbane the madness plant because they witnessed its terrifying effects on both humans and animals. While some Viking shamans used tiny amounts in religious ceremonies, they never allowed it in family gardens where children played. The plant contains powerful alkaloids that cause violent hallucinations, seizures, and often death. What made henbane particularly dangerous was its unpredictable potency. The same plant could vary dramatically in toxin levels depending on growing conditions, making it impossible to use safely. Viking communities learned that even experienced healers couldn't predict its effects, leading to tragic accidents that wiped out entire families. The plant's sticky, hairy leaves and funnel-shaped flowers with purple veins made it distinctive, but Vikings taught their children to recognize and avoid it completely. They understood that curiosity about this plant could be fatal. Its seeds look harmless, but contain concentrated toxins that cause permanent brain damage or death. Archaeological evidence shows Vikings instead cultivated safe herbs like sage and thyme for their medicinal properties. These plants provided reliable healing benefits without the risk of accidental poisoning. They also grew chamomile for its calming effects, achieving therapeutic benefits without gambling with their families' lives. Modern gardeners can follow Viking wisdom by choosing proven safe herbs like lavender, sage, and chamomile. These provide excellent medicinal and culinary benefits without turning your herb garden into a potential emergency room visit. Castor bean, the deceptive beauty, Ricinus communis. Vikings encountered castor beans through Mediterranean trade routes and quickly learned why southern peoples treated them with extreme caution. While the large, tropical-looking leaves and spiky seed pods appeared exotic and attractive, Vikings understood that the glossy seeds contained ricin, one of the deadliest natural toxins known to humanity. What made castor beans particularly dangerous was how normal the seeds looked. Children could easily mistake them for large beans or nuts, not knowing that just one chewed seed could cause organ failure and death within days. Viking traders brought back stories of entire families poisoned by these innocent-looking seeds. Vikings were practical people who couldn't afford to risk their families' lives for ornamental plants. They recognized that castor beans offered no food value to justify their deadly risk. Even the oil, while useful, wasn't worth the danger of having the plants around children and livestock. Instead, Vikings cultivated safe plants with similar dramatic foliage like large-leafed cabbages and kale varieties. These provided impressive visual impact while also serving as reliable food sources. They also grew sunflowers for their large seeds and oil, achieving similar benefits without the lethal consequences. Today, you can create the same bold garden statement with safe alternatives like ornamental kale, sunflowers, or large-leafed hostas. These plants provide dramatic foliage and practical benefits without turning your backyard into a toxic waste zone. Foxglove, the heartstopper, Digitalis purpurea. Vikings called foxglove dead man's bells because they understood its beautiful purple flowers could stop a heart as surely as any battle axe. While modern medicine uses controlled amounts of Digitalis from foxglove to treat heart conditions, Vikings knew that uncontrolled exposure was a death sentence waiting to happen. The plant's tall spikes of bell-shaped flowers made it attractive for gardens, but Vikings recognized that every part contained powerful cardiac glycosides. Even small amounts could cause irregular heartbeat, nausea, and death. They observed that livestock avoided it instinctively, taking this as nature's warning to humans. What made foxglove particularly treacherous was how it could be mistaken for harmless plants like comfrey or borage when young. Viking mothers taught their daughters to recognize its distinctive fuzzy leaves, and never to touch any plant they couldn't identify with absolute certainty. Archaeological evidence shows Vikings instead grew safe purple flowers like wild violets and purple clover. These provided similar color impact while also serving as food sources. Violet leaves are edible and nutritious, while clover flowers make excellent tea. Vikings also cultivated lavender in southern regions, achieving beautiful purple spikes without any toxicity. They understood that true beauty in a garden comes from plants that enhance life rather than threaten it. Modern gardeners can follow this wisdom by choosing safe purple flowers like lavender, salvia, or purple asters. These provide the same stunning visual impact without the risk of accidentally poisoning your family. Oleander, the eternal poison, Nerium oleander. Vikings encountered oleander during raids in Mediterranean regions and quickly learned why local peoples treated it with such respect. Every part of this evergreen shrub, leaves, flowers, stems, and even the smoke from burning it, contains potent cardiac toxins that can kill humans and animals with frightening efficiency. What shocked Viking warriors was how something so beautiful could be so deadly. The plant's clusters of pink, white, or red flowers and glossy green leaves made it appear harmless, even desirable. But they learned that even using oleander branches as cooking skewers could poison an entire meal. Vikings were practical survivors who couldn't afford to bring such risks back to their settlements. They understood that oleander's drought tolerance and beautiful flowers weren't worth the danger it posed to their families and livestock. One curious child or grazing animal could mean tragedy. Instead, Vikings cultivated hardy flowering shrubs like elderberry and hawthorn. These provided similar ornamental value while also producing edible berries and medicinal benefits. They also grew roses for their beauty and rose hips for vitamin C, achieving ornamental goals without deadly consequences. Archaeological evidence shows Vikings preferred plants that served multiple purposes: beauty, food, and medicine combined. They couldn't waste precious garden space on plants that only looked good while threatening their family's safety. Today, you can create beautiful flowering displays with safe alternatives like lilac, elderberry, or flowering quinces. These provide stunning blooms and practical benefits without turning your landscape into a hazardous zone. Yew, the death tree, Taxus baccata. Vikings held yew trees in mystical reverence, but they never planted them near their homes or allowed children to play beneath them. They called yew the death tree because they understood that nearly every part, bark, leaves, seeds, contained taxine, a toxin so powerful that even small amounts could stop a heart within hours. What made yew particularly dangerous was its deceptive appearance. The bright red berries look inviting, especially to children, but the seed inside each berry is deadly. Vikings observed that birds could eat the flesh safely, but mammals died from the seeds, teaching them that what's safe for one creature might kill another. Vikings used yew wood for their finest longbows because of its strength and flexibility, but they processed it with extreme caution. They understood that even the sawdust could be dangerous if inhaled, and they never burned yew wood indoors where the toxic smoke could harm their families. Instead of planting yew for ornamental purposes, Vikings cultivated juniper trees and shrubs. These provided similar evergreen beauty and produced berries useful for flavoring and medicine without the deadly toxicity. They also grew pine and spruce, which offered year-round greenery and practical benefits, like resin and edible inner bark. Modern gardeners can achieve the same evergreen elegance with safe alternatives like juniper, pine, or cedar. These provide beautiful year-round structure without the risk of accidentally poisoning your family or pets. Lily of the Valley, the false friend, Convallaria majalis. Vikings called Lily of the Valley false friend because its innocent appearance and sweet fragrance masked a deadly secret, while the delicate white bell-shaped flowers and broad green leaves looked harmless enough for any garden. Vikings knew that every part contained powerful cardiac glycosides that could kill with deceptive ease. What made this plant particularly treacherous was how it seemed so gentle and harmless. Children were naturally drawn to its pretty flowers and sweet scent, not knowing that even small amounts could cause heart problems, nausea, and death. Viking mothers learned to recognize it immediately and keep their families away. The plant's ability to spread through underground rhizomes meant that once established, it could quietly colonize large areas, creating hidden danger zones throughout a settlement. Vikings understood that they couldn't afford to have such risks spreading uncontrolled through their communities. Instead, Vikings cultivated safe white flowers like wild strawberry blossoms and chamomile. These provided similar delicate beauty while also offering practical benefits. Strawberries for food and chamomile for medicine. They also grew white clover, which provided both ornamental value and nitrogen fixation for their soil. Archaeological evidence shows Vikings preferred plants that combined beauty with utility. They couldn't justify growing something purely ornamental when safe alternatives offered both visual appeal and practical benefits. Today, you can create the same delicate white flower display with safe alternatives like sweet woodruff, white violets, or lily-of-the-valley substitutes like white astilbe. These provide similar charm without the cardiac risks. Bittersweet nightshade, the climbing killer, Solanum dulcamera. Vikings encountered bittersweet nightshade in their travels and quickly learned why it earned such an ominous name. This climbing vine, with its purple flowers and bright red berries, looked attractive enough to use for decoration. But Vikings understood that its beauty came with a deadly price. The entire plant contains toxic alkaloids that can cause serious poisoning or death. What made bittersweet particularly dangerous was how the berries changed from green to bright red as they ripened, creating an attractive display that could tempt children or curious adults. Vikings observed that even small amounts could cause nausea, difficulty breathing, and paralysis. They couldn't risk having such a plant anywhere near their settlements. The vine's climbing habit meant it could quickly spread over fences, buildings, and trees, creating widespread contamination that would be difficult to remove once established. Vikings were practical people who understood that prevention was far easier than trying to eliminate a dangerous plant after it had taken hold. Instead, Vikings cultivated safe climbing plants like wild hops and grapevines. These provided similar coverage and visual appeal while also producing useful crops, hops for brewing and grapes for food and wine. They also grew climbing roses in milder climates, achieving beauty without toxicity. Archaeological evidence shows Vikings valued plants that served multiple purposes. They preferred vines that could provide privacy, beauty, and practical benefits without threatening their family's safety. Modern gardeners can follow this wisdom by choosing safe climbing alternatives like clematis, honeysuckle, or grapevines. These provide excellent coverage and beauty without the poisoning risks. Water hemlock, the most violent death, Cicuta maculata. Vikings called water hemlock the most violent death because they witnessed its horrific effects on both humans and animals who accidentally consumed it. Growing near streams and wetlands, this plant contains cicotoxin, considered one of the most violently toxic substances in the plant kingdom. Even tiny amounts cause seizures so severe they can break bones. What made water hemlock particularly terrifying was how quickly it acted. Unlike other toxic plants that took hours to show effects, water hemlock could cause convulsions and death within minutes of consumption. Vikings who witnessed these poisonings never forgot the violent seizures and agonizing death it caused. The plant's location near water sources made it especially dangerous because both humans and livestock naturally gathered at these spots. Vikings learned to carefully inspect any area near water before allowing their animals to graze or their children to play. Vikings were meticulous about identifying safe water plants versus dangerous ones. They cultivated watercress in clean, flowing streams, but only after carefully removing any hemlock from the area. They also gathered cattail roots and wild rice from wetlands they knew were free of toxic plants. Instead of risking any plant that grew near water without absolute identification, Vikings developed strict protocols for water plant gathering. They taught their children that no plant near water should ever be eaten unless identified by experienced adults. Today, you can enjoy water gardening safely by choosing known safe aquatic plants like water lilies, cattails, or water hyacinth, where legal. Never harvest wild water plants unless you're absolutely certain of their identification. Autumn crocus, the beautiful betrayer, Colchicum autumnale. Vikings encountered autumn crocus during their travels through Europe and learned why local peoples called it the beautiful betrayer. While its purple flowers blooming in fall created stunning displays, Vikings discovered that every part of the plant contains colchicine, a toxin so powerful that even small amounts cause organ failure and agonizing death. What made autumn crocus particularly deceptive was its timing. Blooming when most other flowers had finished, it seemed like a gift from nature. But Vikings learned that its beauty was a trap. The bulbs looked similar to edible onions, and curious foragers had died from this fatal mistake. The plant's ability to bloom without leaves made identification even more challenging. Vikings understood that any plant that seemed to defy natural patterns deserved extreme suspicion. They observed that even experienced herbalists could mistake autumn crocus bulbs for safe alternatives. Instead of risking such deceptive beauty, Vikings cultivated safe fall-blooming plants like asters and late-flowering herbs. These provided similar seasonal color, while also offering practical benefits. Asters attracted beneficial insects, and herbs like sage could be harvested for winter medicine. Vikings also grew true crocuses, spring-blooming saffron crocus, in southern regions, which provided valuable spice without the deadly toxicity. They understood the importance of distinguishing between similar-looking plants that could mean the difference between prosperity and death. Modern gardeners can achieve beautiful fall displays with safe alternatives like autumn-blooming asters, mums, or ornamental kale. These provide stunning seasonal color without the risk of fatal misidentification. Pokeweed, the false spinach, Phytolacca americana. Vikings who traveled to North America quickly learned about pokeweed from indigenous peoples, who warned them about this deceptive plant. While young pokeweed leaves could be eaten if prepared correctly, Vikings understood that the roots, seeds, and mature leaves contained powerful toxins that could cause respiratory failure and death. What made pokeweed particularly dangerous was how it resembled harmless leafy greens when young. The plant's large leaves and robust growth made it appear like excellent food. But Vikings learned that improper preparation could be fatal. Even correctly prepared pokeweed required multiple boilings and water changes, too risky for busy Viking households. The plant's impressive purple berries and red stems created attractive displays, but Vikings knew that children might be tempted to taste them. They observed that birds could eat the berries safely, but mammals often died from the same fruit, reinforcing their understanding that animal behavior wasn't always a reliable guide for human safety. Instead of gambling with pokeweed, Vikings cultivated reliable leafy greens like cabbage, kale, and wild spinach varieties. These provided superior nutrition without requiring dangerous preparation methods or risking accidental poisoning from eating the wrong part of the plant. Vikings also grew safe berry-producing plants like elderberries and wild strawberries, achieving similar visual appeal while providing genuinely safe and nutritious food for their families. Today, you can grow excellent leafy greens like spinach, chard, or kale without the complexity and danger of pokeweed. These modern varieties offer superior nutrition and complete safety. Jimsonweed, the devil's trumpet, Datura stramonium. Vikings called Jimsonweed devil's trumpet because its large, white, trumpet-shaped flowers seem to herald madness and death. This plant contains powerful hallucinogenic alkaloids that cause violent delirium, and Vikings understood that even small amounts could drive people permanently insane or kill them outright. What made Jimsonweed particularly terrifying was its unpredictable effects. The same amount that caused mild hallucinations in one person could kill another, making it impossible to use safely, even for experienced healers. Vikings witnessed the violent, uncontrollable behavior it caused and wanted nothing to do with such unpredictable danger. The plant's spiky seed pods and large leaves made it distinctive, but Vikings taught their children to recognize and avoid it completely. They understood that curiosity about this plant could destroy minds and lives, creating burdens their communities couldn't bear. Instead of risking Jimsonweed's dramatic flowers, Vikings cultivated safe white flowering plants like elderflower and wild roses. These provided beautiful blooms while also producing useful products. Elderflowers for medicine and rose petals for food and fragrance. Vikings also grew morning glories in warmer climates, achieving similar trumpet-shaped flowers without the deadly alkaloids. They understood that true beauty came from plants that enhanced life rather than threatened sanity. Modern gardeners can create stunning white flower displays with safe alternatives like moonflowers, white petunias, or angel's trumpet varieties bred for safety. These provide dramatic blooms without the risk of accidental poisoning or psychological damage. Manchineel, the death apple, Hippomene manzanella. Vikings, who ventured into Caribbean waters during their later explorations, learned about manchineel from indigenous peoples who called it the death apple. This tree produces fruit that looks like small green apples, but every part, fruit, leaves, bark, and even rainwater dripping from it, contains toxins so powerful they can cause blindness, severe burns, and death. What made manchineel the ultimate forbidden plant was how it violated every expectation of safety. Its innocent-looking fruit seemed perfect for hungry travelers, but even standing under the tree during rain could cause severe skin burns. Vikings learned that indigenous peoples marked these trees with warnings and never camped nearby. The tree's ability to cause harm without direct contact made it uniquely dangerous. Vikings understood that any plant that could hurt you just by being near it during a storm was too dangerous to exist anywhere near human settlements. They observed that even experienced local guides treated it with extreme caution. Instead of risking any unknown tropical fruits, Vikings stuck to familiar safe alternatives when exploring new lands. They cultivated known safe fruit trees like apples and pears in suitable climates, and learned to identify truly safe local alternatives from trusted indigenous guides. Vikings also developed strict protocols for testing unknown plants, using small amounts on skin first, then lips, then tongue, before ever swallowing anything. This systematic approach helped them avoid plants like manchineel that could kill with first contact. Today, most people will never encounter manchineel, but the Viking principle remains valuable. Never eat unknown fruits or plants, and always research before planting anything new in your garden. These 15 deadly plants represent more than just botanical dangers. They're lessons in Viking survival wisdom that kept families alive for generations. What's remarkable is how Vikings developed this knowledge through careful observation, community sharing, and respect for nature's power. Their practical approach of choosing safe alternatives that provided both beauty and utility remains as valuable today as it was 1,000 years ago. Start with proven safe plants like the Vikings grew, kale, elderberry, and juniper, and build your garden on wisdom rather than risk. Subscribe for more ancient survival secrets that could save your life.